But had a wonderful lunch and a good networking session, and we apologize for the slight delay. We will now proceed with our second segment of the conference, where we will explore the intricacies of emerging markets. To start off this segment, I would like to invite Mr. Giuseppe Nicolosi, Chief Operating Officer of KS Distribution, to moderate our first panel session, Business Development Strategies in Emerging Markets. Joining him on the panel, please welcome Mr. George Abraham, Chairman and Managing Director of the George Abraham Group, Mr. Helio Sifoni, Director and Founder of Sapiens Global, Mr. Simon Tsai, Group CEO and Executive Director of Cansteel Group, and Ms. Elaine Liu, Vice President of Global Partner Operations, SAP Southeast Asia.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yes, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. I hope we will be able to keep you awake after your big lunch. Okay. So the session for this afternoon, as has been indicated, is about strategies in emerging markets. Business strategies in emerging markets. We do have, I'm honored to moderate a very high level and distinguished panels. They have been introduced to you already, so let me go through very quickly. George Abraham on my far right, Chairman and Managing Director of GA Group. Then we had Helio Sifoni, Director Founder of Sapiens Global, a strategic consulting company. Elaine Liu, who is the Vice President for Global Partner Operations for SAP in Southeast Asia, and Simon Tsai, Group CEO and Executive Director of Cansteel Group. The strategies in emerging markets is a very important topic. We all know the importance of emerging markets, how strategic they are, and the high potential that they do have. There are a number of reasons for that. One is demographics. By 2030, it is envisaged that the global population will be around 8.5 billion people. Only 1.2 billion will live in Europe and North America, 5 billion in Asia, 1.2 billion in Latin America, and 1.5 billion in Africa. So take out 1.2 billion in mature markets, the rest of this population are going to are living in emerging markets. And they will be concentrated into urban areas. So it's very important for us to understand what emerging markets are all about, to be able to understand what are the strategies that we need to develop to be successful as businesses in these markets. And by the way, we refer to emerging markets, but in reality, each emerging market is different from another. So the strategies that may work in one part of the world, in one emerging market in Latin America, may not work in Asia Pacific. So it's important also to have an understanding what are the differences between emerging markets. In addition to the 8.5 billion people I was referring to earlier, in the next 10 to 15 years, emerging markets will add to the middle class about 1 billion people. So there will be a growing middle class, and about 70% of those will be in Asia, and 30% in the rest of the emerging markets. So very critical markets for us to understand. The question is, what are the challenges, what are the complexity, what are the things that we need to do to be able to be successful, as I mentioned earlier. In more recent times, there's been a kind of philosophy that emerging markets companies are successful if they have got a very good implementation strategy. They just need to be implementing, they need to be in the market, they need to be stops. So execution, speed, opportunities, tenacity are the recipes for success. I like to differ a little bit from that view. I think there is a need for SMEs and companies operating in emerging markets to develop a strategy, to develop capabilities for them to be able to be competitive with their more established competitors from mature markets. So I will stop at that for the time being. There will be a number of questions you will have in your mind. So please, as you hear the panelists talking about their experience, their recommendations about strategies, formulate your questions because we would like to actually have participation from the audience rather than us holding forth here on the stage. So if I may ask George to start to kick off the session, that would be great. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. This is a very difficult session from my experience of conferences. People have had a nice lunch, ready to pack their pillows and go to sleep. So I hope I will have an audience that is able to listen to what I have to contribute. I went through this little booklet that all of you have. Actually, it's got very, very good information, and one of them is 5 steps to success in emerging markets. So I said to myself, what the hell am I doing here then? So I decided that I would share my experience with you, because I first went to Brazil in 1983 and went all the way from Belém down to Porto Alegre. It was a fascinating experience. When I came back and spread glowing reports about why it's important to look at Brazil, they thought I was mad. So since then, of course, things have changed. I've been to Argentina, to Uruguay, briefly to Peru and Chile, but I think this is a great subcontinent that requires a lot of attention. So instead of going into the management aspects, I'm going to share with you very quickly what I feel are some of the areas that companies from Singapore and Southeast Asia should look at. Firstly, if you look at Southeast Asia and Latin America, we have to understand that economic engagement can be enhanced mainly by way of investments. And the conventional trade in goods has challenges because of the distance, the time zone differences, and also because of business culture. If you look at trade in commodities these days, the prices of commodities have gone down. It may still continue because of their bulk nature and their need by markets. But what is essential is involvement of mega institutions that can help manufacturing goods and services businesses to grow by way of investments. So my first point is that if you want to get into South America, unless you're prepared to look at investments, not necessarily in a big way, and I look at some of the ways in which this can be done, it's going to be a long process. Now, there is a need to build at bilateral levels. We've heard in the morning about the free trade agreements that exist between some of the South American countries and the world. And I think it's very important that we realize that if we can build on these bilateral levels, then business alliances, joint ventures, technology transfers, and also in areas of tourism cooperation, this would make a big difference and would help in increasing the trade between South America and our part of the world. Now the focus sectors, because of the raw material resources that are available in South America, I think essentially it has to be energy, oil and gas, which we have heard in the morning is doing extremely well. But there is a new market, which is the renewable energy resources market. And this is something that we should look at, not just solar energy, but also wind energy and other sources of energy that are available. And in the case of Singapore, we have excellent linkages with countries like China and even India for wind power, which have success stories. And we should look at partnering with some of these countries to go into South America. Now, I mentioned tourism because Singapore has built up a terrific tourism infrastructure, and there are lots of experiences that we can share with the South American subcontinent. Now, from a practical experience, I have an associate company that I work with based in India. They are in finance and banking, and they're also into hospitality besides other areas. And recently, they bought a hospitality outlet in Costa Rica, which we heard about in the morning. And it is so efficiently run that they do not have to go and sit there and run it. It's running by itself, and is the most profitable hospitality unit that they have outside India and anywhere where they are running hospitality outlets. So that piece that you saw on Costa Rica was not just a tourism thing. It really has a lot of sense in it. Now, other focus sectors that we can look at: agriculture and food processing. Now, this would include equipment and machinery because, as you know, South America has a lot of commodities, but the agri-processing part of it is not as advanced as we would like it to be, and this is one area that has potential, and this is something that we can look at. Pharmaceuticals and biotechnology, we have a lot of companies in Singapore and in Southeast Asia that have expertise in these areas, and this is something that we can also look at in our linkages with Latin America. IT and IT enabling services, of course, this part of the world has a very good track record in IT, and a lot of even the logistics services are controlled by IT, and this is one area that we would have a lot of interest. Mining and minerals from Singapore, certainly not, but in association with other companies, possible. For manufacturing, this can include automotive, chemicals, and textiles. And for shipping and logistics, Singapore's excellent port and air facilities can certainly be used as a gateway. And tourism is one area that again has potential for development. From my experience, to be more country-specific, Brazil would have opportunities in chemicals and processing equipment, pharmaceuticals, plastics and resins and processing equipment, because there's a lot of this movement from South Asia, automobiles and parts, and the automobiles and parts will also include tractors, two-wheelers, and the parts for automobiles, as well as industrial textiles. Colombia, Venezuela, and Peru, again, oil and gas, pharmaceuticals, chemicals, and plastics, and mineral and mining, which will include mostly equipment, because this is one area that has potential. For Colombia, Venezuela, and Peru, it's engineering machinery, transport equipment, iron and steel products, and tourism and entertainment related to tourism. I'm actually tapping on some of the experiences that I've had with clients and organizations that I've worked with, like Chambers of Commerce in the region. In the Mercosur area, mining besides mining, captive farming, which is on lease or purchase or joint venture, is one area that has a lot of promise. And this, in Uruguay and Paraguay, for production of pulses, lentils, and groundnuts and soy. This is an area of great interest to some companies that are actively pursuing this, and I think in the near future we will see this come to fruition. Automotive components in Mercosur for Brazil and Argentina. If you're going to link up with oil and gas-based production units, then this would be in chemicals and fertilizers, which also has a lot of potential. Clean energy projects, this again has a lot of potential, and Singapore has a lot of experience in this area. Construction of hotels and tourism facilities, I think increasingly people are not looking at setting up huge hotels, they're looking at setting up boutique hotels and units that are related to ecotourism, and some of them have already started functioning. Uruguay can be used as an export and assembly hub for Latin American market, and some companies are already looking at it. More importantly, I think we could establish trading houses, because there are quite a few that are active and more are going in, for the supply of agricultural, milk and meat products to Asian and African countries from Latin America. Finally, for Singapore Singapore's importance as a trading hub for Latin America, I think the items for promotion would be meat and meat products, organic and inorganic chemicals, dyes and pigments which have a substantial market in other areas, raw hides and skins which are available from South America, leather articles, wool and cotton yarn because of the textile productions. One area that is becoming of interest is glasses and glassware, and also optical, photographic, and cinematographic apparatus. So, what I'd like to do here is to give you an indication of some of the sectors and the products that companies from this part of the world are interested in, and this is not just Singapore but also ASEAN and South Asia and East Asia. And I think if we are going to look at strategies for entry, as I said, it has to be investment based if it's going to be successful. We can set up a trading house, but the trading house will have to be able to link up eventually with the manufacturing sector. I'll stop here for now so that my colleagues can continue from here. Thank you.
Kelly, would you like to go next?
Yeah.